The Adopted Shadow. Boston, 1923. Margaret Wheeler stood in the carefully decorated nursery, her hand resting on the empty crib. After 5 years of trying and 3 miscarriages, she and her husband Thomas had finally accepted the bitter truth. They would never have a child of their own. Perhaps, Thomas suggested gently, placing his hand on her shoulder, it's time we considered other options. St. Christopher's Home for Children stood atop a windswept cliff overlooking the Atlantic, its Gothic spires reaching toward perpetually gray skies. The ancient stones seemed to whisper secrets as Margaret and Thomas followed Sister Agnes through drafty corridors. "We have many children in need of loving homes," the nun said, though something in her tone suggested reservation. In the corner of the dormitory, a small boy sat alone, his dark eyes fixed on the dancing shadows cast by afternoon light. While other children played and laughed, he remained still, almost unnaturally so. "That's Ethan," Sister Agnes whispered. "He's different from the others. Special, you might say." Margaret felt drawn to the boy immediately. There was something in his eyes, a depth of loneliness that spoke to her own empty years. When she approached, Ethan looked up and smiled, and for a moment, the shadows around him seemed to pulse. "Hello," he said softly. "I've been waiting for you." As they prepared to finalize the adoption, Sister Agnes pulled Thomas aside. "There are things you should know," she began, her weathered face grave. "Strange things happen around the boy, things we cannot explain." But Thomas, seeing his wife's joy, dismissed the warning as superstition. During the train ride to Boston, Margaret noticed how the lights in their compartment flickered whenever Ethan grew excited or upset. Outside, storm clouds gathered despite the forecast for clear skies. "The darkness likes to follow me," Ethan explained matter-of-factly, his small hand tracing patterns on the window glass. That evening, as Margaret tucked Ethan into his new bed, she noticed how the shadows in the room seemed deeper than natural, how they curled and twisted at the edges of her vision. "Don't worry," Ethan whispered as she kissed his forehead. "They won't hurt you. They're my friends." Their golden retriever, Max, who had always been gentle and friendly, began acting strangely. He would growl whenever Ethan entered a room, backing away with his tail between his legs. One morning, they found Max's water bowl frozen solid, despite the summer heat. Ethan's first day at school brought new concerns. His teacher reported that during recess, other children's shadows seemed to stretch toward him, creating impossible shapes on the playground. "He's a peculiar child," the teacher wrote. "Brilliant, but there's something unsettling about him." While cleaning Ethan's room, Margaret found an old photograph hidden beneath his mattress. It showed a woman with Ethan's dark eyes, standing before a strange altar. The woman's shadow, cast on the wall behind her, bore horns. Thomas began hearing voices in the night, whispered conversations between Ethan and unseen entities. When he investigated, he would find the boy alone, surrounded by writhing shadows that retreated like smoke when the lights came on. "They tell me things," Ethan explained, "about where I came from, about what I am." Determined to understand their son's peculiarities, Margaret spent hours in the public library's restricted section, studying ancient texts on demonology and the occult. The more she learned, the more she recognized the signs, the mark of infernal heritage. In a centuries-old grimoire, Margaret found an illustration that made her blood run cold, a ritual of unholy conception, creating a bridge between the mortal world and the realm of shadows. The woman in the ritual bore a striking resemblance to the one in Ethan's photograph. During Ethan's 8th birthday celebration, the candles on his cake flickered blue, and every shadow in the room converged around him as he made his wish. The other children screamed. Their parents never allowed them to return. As Ethan grew, so did his influence over darkness. Shadows bent to his will, and in moments of strong emotion, they took solid form. Claws of darkness that could move objects, open doors, and sometimes, frighteningly, touch the living. Late one night, a stranger appeared at their door, an elderly man who claimed to be a scholar of the occult. He spoke of prophecies, of a child born of shadow who would bridge two worlds. He must be protected, the man insisted, or destroyed. As evidence of Ethan's true nature mounted, Margaret faced an impossible decision. The boy she had grown to love as her son was also something otherworldly, potentially dangerous. Yet when she looked into his eyes, she saw not evil, but fear and desperate need for acceptance. During a violent thunderstorm, Ethan's powers manifested fully. Shadows engulfed their home, taking forms that defied sanity. But when Margaret reached out to him, unafraid, the darkness retreated. "I don't want to be bad," Ethan sobbed. "I just want to be your son." The elderly scholar returned with ancient texts and protective wards. There was a way, he explained, to bind Ethan's darker nature without destroying him, but it required an act of pure love. Margaret didn't hesitate. Under a moonless sky, Margaret offered her own blood in exchange for Ethan's soul. The shadows writhed and screamed, but maternal love proved stronger than infernal bonds. The ritual left its mark on Margaret, a streak of white in her hair, and the ability to see the shadows for what they truly were. But Ethan was worth any cost. As Ethan learned to control his powers, the Wheelers discovered that his connection to darkness could be used for good. Shadows that once threatened now protected their home. On Ethan's 13th birthday, they received a letter from his birth mother, a confession and a warning. Forces of darkness would come for him, drawn by his unique nature. The Wheelers transformed their home into a fortress against supernatural threats. Thomas studied warding magic, while Margaret's blood-won insight helped them detect approaching danger. When the dark forces finally came, they found not a helpless child, but a family united. Ethan's powers, tempered by love and acceptance, proved stronger than pure darkness. Offered unlimited power by his infernal father, Ethan made his decision. "I already have everything I need," he declared, standing between his adoptive parents. In the end, it wasn't rituals or magic that saved them, but the simple truth that love, real, unconditional love, is the strongest force in any realm. The shadows remained part of their lives, but no longer as a curse. Ethan learned to embrace both his humanity and his otherworldly heritage, finding balance between light and darkness. Years later, the Wheeler home became a sanctuary for other children with supernatural gifts. Margaret and Thomas's courage in choosing love over fear had created a legacy of acceptance and understanding. As Ethan grew into a young man, he understood that being different didn't mean being cursed. His unique nature was neither good nor evil. It was simply part of who he was, shaped by the choices he made and the love of his family. Through unwavering love and acceptance, the Wheelers transformed what could have been a tale of horror into one of redemption. They proved that family bonds transcend blood and origin, and that even the darkest shadows can be overcome by the light of unconditional love. True family is not defined by blood or nature, but by choice and love. Even in the darkest circumstances, acceptance and understanding can transform what appears cursed into something beautiful. Our true character is determined not by our origins, but by our choices and the love we give and receive. We'd love to hear your interpretations and reactions to the adopted shadow story. How did the story's themes of family, acceptance, and transformation resonate with you? What do you think happens next in the lives of the Wheeler family? Did any particular scene or moment in the story stand out to you? How do you think Ethan's story continues after these events? What other supernatural children might find their way to the Wheeler sanctuary? How do you think Margaret and Thomas's experience changes their approach to helping other families? What other challenges might arise as Ethan grows into his unique role in both the mortal and shadow realms? Share your theories and insights in the comments below.